Evening. I am calling the Monday, October 2023 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on this beautiful evening. Tonight's Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting will be held in person and virtually by using Zoom. As chair, I will be leading the Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting, and the public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person or join via online Zoom. If attendees experience audio problems, we suggest you leave the meeting and then rejoin. This usually fixes the issue. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted online at burnsvillemn.gov in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is available for viewing on BCTV and the city's website. If you are unable to participate this evening and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email your comments to city staff or mail your comments directly to City Hall. You may also call into the meeting at 651-372-8299. For each public hearing, I will open up a time when callers may speak to that item and will give more instructions at that time. Your call will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Please note there may be a slight delay due to differences in technology. If speaking by phone, please mute your computer since there may be a delay. Now on to tonight's agenda. The first item for tonight's Natural Resources Commission meeting is the adoption of the agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any changes to the agenda tonight? Nope, no changes. Staff, do you have any changes to tonight's agenda?
Nothing from staff.
Perfect. May I have a motion for the adoption of tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Cleveland. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And the motion passes. And now we move on to approval of the minutes. We are looking at the approval of the May 1st, 2023 Parks and Natural Resources meeting minutes. Commissioners, are there any changes to the minutes? No changes? Staff, are there any changes to the minutes?
Nothing from staff, but I do want to point out, as it's noted in the miscellaneous comments, that we did not meet in June or July, and then we had tours in August and September, so we are looking at the May minutes for right now.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And the motion passes. Are there any members of the public on Zoom that wish to speak tonight?
I have not seen anyone, Madam Chair.
All right. So let's move on to the approval for the wetland replacement plan for the 12 Cemetery Drainage Improvement Project. I invite Cam Kilmer to join us this evening. Welcome, Cam.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Cam Kilmer. I'm an engineering project manager here at the City of Burnsville. We're here to present the Highway 13 Cemetery Drainage Improvement Project. I have Justin Clabo and Laura Weir from AE2S here. They're working on the project for us. We're going to talk about the effects of this project on the existing wetland, and we're looking for a motion for recommendation of the approval of the wetland permit. Project location is on the north side of Highway 13 between Nicollet Avenue and Burnsville High School at the Pleasant View Memorial Gardens property. The existing basin is having flooding issues during large rain events. The flooding is happening on the cemetery property and downstream in the parking lot for the Nicollet Business Campus. And Laura and Justin will now give you some more details on this project.
Thank you, Cam. As Cam noted, we have experienced seeing flooding in this area, and you can see by some of the pictures here within the parking lot on the business campus that it's very real flooding, right? The business owner has noted complaints to the city engineer over the course of the last few years. I should say preceding, I guess, the last couple drought years that we've had in the summers, but rolling up to that, there was numerous times where lots of flooding was occurring within his parking lot. So with that, the city engineer at the time looked at us and looked at, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take one step back. They solicited us to help understand the situation. And as part of a citywide resiliency study, we had identified this area as an at-risk area just because of potential flooding. And so when they were getting city complaints about, well, there is flooding, there's this issue, you know, we were provided videos, we were provided photos, and we said, okay, here's what our existing modeling, here's what the existing modeling looks like, here's the findings that we're seeing. How does that correlate against what the landowner is experiencing? And so what we were looking at and finding within the model lined up very closely to exactly what lined up with what they were seeing. And so we were able to correlate the model results with actual real world information and observation. So for me as a water resource engineer, that makes it a lot easier to do my job because I've actually seen it. And then I can proceed to move forward with finding out a solution and how to mitigate for that impact as a whole. So as you're seeing here, we're showing you a few different pictures of, you know, the location of it all. Obviously on the right, upper right corner, you're looking at the parking lot from the commercial business itself. In the left side, you're actually looking for roughly where the wetland is at and then looking back into where the commercial business is at. And then you can see some of that flooding. Taken the same day where you can see the same car sitting in the parking lot as the water is starting to rise in different times of the event itself. So within this, here's a rough outline of what the wetland looks like. I'll have Laura Weir also come in here and talk about, she's our wetland scientist with A2S, so I'd like to turn it over to her, just talking through the different qualities of the wetland and some of the different configuration as well with it.
Hi, I got a quick question. Going back one slide, it looks like there's a lot of, looks like there's been a fair amount of earth moving already in this photograph, piled up at the bases of the trees. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of sedimentation. So I'm interested to hear how much sedimentation has been happening. This looks like scrape.
Absolutely, and I'll have Laura talk a little bit of the wetland, and then one of the slides coming up, we do have some additional pictures of the location, which help show kind of that sediment deposition, and then I'll talk you through like kind of where that's coming from, if that's okay.
Great, thanks.
So the existing wetland is shown as the yellow area on the slide. It was delineated and approved by the city of Burnsville in August 2020. As part of that wetland delineation, it was identified as a temporarily flooded basin, which is a PEMA or PEMB in wetland type. But the wetland was not identified in the city wetland protection and management plan, so it did not have a documented quality rating that the city has on their other wetlands. So as part of this project, we did the quality study using the MinRAM tool, and from that analysis identified that the wetland was low quality, and that's primarily due to few species that are generally common. It's dominated by ash and cottonwood, as well as reed canary grass in some of the more open areas and stinging nettle. And like you previously noted, Commissioner, there was excess sediment within the wetland. So here are some more images of the wetland. We can see that it's generally treed, it has water during rain events and during flood events. And I'm going to turn it back over to Justin to talk about the sediment.
Thank you, Laura. So the sediment is caused by a primary factor here, and I'll show you just right now overall a big picture, and I'll use my mouse to kind of navigate here to show you guys a perspective of, really where that sediment is coming from. So let's see if I can just make this a little bit bigger for you guys here. Oh, not. Oh, we're just gonna have to go with the little red dot if that's okay with you guys. So in the far right side, what is happening is that there's stormwater runoff that's collected in the Trunk Highway 13 right away. Right now, that water comes kind of from the northeast or easterly side of Trunk Highway 13 on the north side of the roadway, flows down a rural grass ditch. It crosses a culvert underneath the trail system, and then we're showing obviously future improvements here. But what the water ends up doing is it works its way through the trees. And as it works its way through its trees, Commissioner Cleveland, you noted, where's all that sediment coming from? Well, what's happened is as it's worked its way through the trees, there's lots of canopy growth, so what that means is that there's not a lot of protection on the surface of the area where the water's running, which then leads to sediment collection and redistribution in a different area, right? So like think of a stream, if you run your garden hose on a sandbox or in a sand pot, what happens? That water moves that sand to a different location. And so a very similar action, obviously an erosive action is happening here as well. And so what's happening is that sediment's being picked up, suspended into the water column, and then it's moved down into where the wetland is located and redepositing that water in that wetland. Now, where is the flooding coming from, right? Like, then you say, well, okay, Justin, it's got to go somewhere. Well, it does, and it doesn't. So the problem is that there's really no outlet for the wetland except for that water to flow over the curb line and into the parking lot that we were showing. There is one single street catch basin in the parking lot that's trying to pick up all this runoff from MnDOT property, from the cemetery parcel, from the actual commercial business that is designed to pick up and collect, but unfortunately was not designed to pick up water from an offsite area like this. And so the focus of what we're trying to do with this project is to utilize these areas, because they're really the only areas that we have available to us to mitigate for this flooding, is to control the discharge of water and then direct it into the storm sewer system without creating the erosive potential that it does with an uncontrolled environment. So that's really where you're seeing all that erosion coming from, is because of all that water really going underneath the tree line and the canopy, suspending material and then depositing out within the wetland area. So as I touched on it here, so our improvement is, like I mentioned, we're trying to control the flow of water, and we're working with MnDOT right now to participate. You can obviously see they're going to be providing a land available to them along Trunk Highway 13 to help support this project as a whole. It doesn't just take one or the other. This is really the only area that we have available to us. You'll notice on the very north side of the picture here, on the top side, you can see the small little rectangles. Those are actually grave sites. Those are platted or are in current use. So we really don't have the ability to go north. On the east side as well, we have not, there's a few spots on here, but roughly on the edge of the tree line is where that location is at. So it's, as I draw on here right now, it's kind of roughly the edge of the use of that cemetery. So we're really kind of boxed into a confined area. And as we went through the different modeling procedures, we looked at it and said, you know what, our best ability to do this is we can let MnDOT have a pond on their parcel. We then also create a pond on the north side, and between both of them, they'll help store and retain enough water temporarily that they can slowly discharge that water into the storm sewer system, then ultimately out without causing adverse flooding into different areas. And so we are maintaining water to that area as well. So we do have a storm sewer line, a storm sewer line as it comes through the ditch. It comes this way, and we have a system that jogs to the north, ultimately discharging into the area where the wetland's at to help preserve that flow of water that is coming through the ditch, and also preventing it from eroding the slopes as well. As we talked about, is if it was the open land, we would have to protect that with riprap or other things to help prevent an erosion from forming or occurring. So we do have water going both to the pond CS1 as it's referenced in the figure, as well as pond C1T within the MnDOT property as well.
With the addition of the ponds, all the existing trees would come down?
Unfortunately, we do need to remove the trees for the ponds. We are trying to maintain it as much as possible. You can look at here, we have a 20-foot grade difference between roughly where the pond normal water level is at and where we're tying back in. It's pretty elevated. But what we're trying to do is maintain this corridor of trees as much as possible between the two basins, and so that we can preserve that and then also help revegetate with native vegetation. So our plan is to, any area we disturb, with the exception of the small area up here in the northeast where the cemetery parcel still utilizes that for an active space, we will be restoring with native vegetation to try to reestablish the ecosystem that was there beforehand.
Is that currently in the cost plan? Because I don't remember reading it. Is it?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, it's already in our design plan to have the native vegetation in there.
Out of curiosity, it looks like the DOT parcel is going to have a rip-wrapped bottom, and it sounds like also with the tree removal, a lot of it's green ash probably. So, those are going to be gone at some point anyway, and they're not going to have any evapotranspiration benefits or anything, so them being missing, it's down to the cottonwoods.
You are correct. We have been working with the city forester in collaboration with this, and he did do a site visit and confirm, there's no oaks or, trees of that caliber out here for, something that we really want to preserve and look at. And Commissioner, you were spot on with the quality of trees that are present on the site.
So what's the final outcome for the water? Is it going to get eventually through storm sewer treatment down towards Cliff Fen Park, or,
Yep.
Because I don't see a.
Yeah, apologies, don't have a large-scale figure of the map. The water is still going to go to the same location it was, or has always been going, but it's just going to get there in a more controlled manner. So with all the lines on here, it's a little difficult to see, but the city does have a trunk storm sewer line. If you can follow my cursor here, kind of on the west here, it does turn and then heads off the page and then ultimately down to the river. So this is roughly the direction. And so what we're doing is, with that large concrete diameter pipe, we are going to tie into it with another concrete storm sewer pipe. So that way the water fills this area, then it'll slowly discharge as that storm sewer can handle that additional flow as it goes out and downstream. So helps alleviate and is providing, some regional benefit for the community to make sure that it can help slow down the flow of water and control it in a manner that it will try to minimize as much as possible any other flooding in other areas.
So this water is going to get to, by hook or by crook, it's going to get to Gun Club Lake, Black Dog Lake, and eventually Minnesota River. So, and the desire here is going to be less sediment moving in that direction?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
And as it's draining off of the highway into that C1T pond, are we doing anything like a rain garden or anything like that to help filter through any pollutants that might be coming off that highway?
We do not have anything proposed for that. With this current plan, the water that's coming from the upstream area is already going through a grass swale along Trunk Highway 13. The runoff that you're seeing, anything that will sheet flow obviously will be caught through, we'll call it the upland buffer and the transitional area from the roadway itself. There are a few catch basins on Trunk Highway 13 that are obviously going to be directly to that slope and into the riprap corridor, but no, there is nothing currently planned for that.
There is currently wetland, marshland, just to the west.
Southwest
of this.
Yep, still on the north side of Trunk Highway 13 there.
So what is that? Is that catching anything, or is that just considered natural wetland?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer because we did not have that delineated as part of this project. With our project in the watershed, our water stayed kind of, we'll say, in this upper area, and that water is another sub-watershed or watershed that does ultimately feed in the same direction and does get to the same trunk storm sewer pipe, but our water was not going to go directly down there. We were maintaining it in the location we were at. So we didn't, again, knowing the wetland type characteristics to it, something that we wanted to stay away from as well and focus on where we're at.
So there was no specific study that would just put the pipe and the drainage along Trunk Highway 13 and push it into that current wetland?
That area also is prone to flooding, so
Okay.
it was evaluated. We'll say as part of a hydraulic analysis. We didn't look at it from the wetland, like actual dynamics of delineation or anything. It's another sensitive area that if we send more water there, it actually will exacerbate flooding in that location. So we're trying to make sure that we maintain the water in the direction that it's currently going without sending it a different direction, then creating a new problem somewhere else. So this is why we were maintaining the water at this location.
How much of this is created due to the recent changes in our precipitation?
It's a very difficult question. Precipitation type is changing, right? We have evaluated and designed this project based on the most recent rainfall data that we can utilize that's used throughout the state of Minnesota and a lot of other different states, Atlas 14 for reference. But that's something that we're always trying to strive to make sure we're catching, right? It's just one of those things that we're doing our analysis and our modeling and our designs is something we're always trying to maintain and keep up with. And that's why the city itself did a resiliency study a number of years ago that we were fortunate enough to help assist with, and that's where this area and notable and a lot of other areas were identified for just what are at-risk locations? And I say, in general speaking, like, here's different areas that we can work with individuals like Cam to say, here, how do we help improve to be more resilient for anticipated events that we could model to at this point, but we just really don't know when down the line they might occur.
I imagine that's not easy to plan for these days.
Rain is not a thing to plan for. We can do our best to estimate what it might look like and, hope we're getting really close so that way we can make sure we make informed choices and decisions.
Is this city-owned property?
We are in the process of acquiring the property right now.
Who currently owns it?
The cemetery currently owns the parcel where the CS1 basin is located, and we're working with that landowner who has actually already signed over the land to the city. So I guess semantics in the sense of we're bringing that to city council for approval and adoption, concurrent with this as well.
Other than construction or clearing, for lack of a better term, is there any significant issues with I'm assuming those are apartments or residential building right there that they're going to incur, other than the initial construction noise and stuff?
Yeah, I think you hit a spot on.
Okay.
I'll turn it back over to Laura as you guys continue to take more questions, and she'll continue to cover just the wetland-specific aspects of it all.
So we're here today seeking approval of a wetland replacement plan. So we have wetland impacts on on this project, that's why we're here. So the excavation within the wetland to create this pond creates a 0.35 acre impact to the wetland. Of that 0.35 acres, 0.08 acres, shown in the dark blue hatch on your screen, would be conversion to non-wetland. So that's area where it's being excavated or we're not touching as part of the project, and it's losing hydrology because that area would get water as it was a wetland, but now the water is being routed to the pond. We did look at if that area could still remain wetland, but it was determined because of those grave sites that you can see that Justin has pointed out, as well as the large existing trees in that area, it wasn't a feasible option to try and expand the pond or maintain hydrology in that area. So, but the remaining 0.27 acres of wetland impact are actually a conversion. So they're being converted from the wetland type, which was a seasonally flooded basin, to this shallow open water area with a seasonally flooded basin fringe. So it's still considered wetland under the Wetland Conservation Act, and the city is not, so you're replacing it at the site. So what the replacement plan that you're seeking, that we're seeking approval for, includes that, as well as seeks credit for that 0.08 acres that is conversion to non-wetland, and that's proposed to be replaced through the purchase of wetland credits, and the wetland credits are proposed to come from the Scott County SWCD Bank. So as part of the,
What's the total acreage that you're looking to get from the bank? Acreage?
yep, 0.16 acres. So we're doing a 2-to-1 replacement, which is required under the Wetland Conservation Act.
Here in the metro, yeah.
So as part of the wetland permitting process, the wetland permit application was submitted to the city of Burnsville, who is the LGU for the Wetland Conservation Act. So the city of Burnsville then called a TEP meeting, which is the Technical Evaluation Panel. That's typically comprised of the Board of Soil and Water representative, a city natural resource staff, and the Dakota County SWCD. It can also include the Department of Natural Resources if there's a Department of Natural Resources water being impacted. That wasn't the case in this project, so they weren't involved. So, held a meeting with the TEP. The TEP asked questions, some of them similar to what you're asking today. And overall, the TEP agreed with the application, agreed that there is a purpose and need for this project, and that justifies the wetland impact. The proposed replacement of that there's still going to be a wetland in part of this, and the rest is going to be bought with wetland credits. They agreed with that approach. So we ultimately ended up with the TEP recommending approval of the application by Burnsville as the LGU, and that's why we're here today.
So the TEP has approved the replacement plan?
The TEP has recommended approval, but it's up to the city to approve it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So, thank you, Commission, for your time, and we'll continue to take questions.
One of my favorite questions to ask is, what would happen if we do not approve this?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, as the project manager, I suppose I'll take that one on. It's continued potential for flooding, right? And it is a very hazardous situation, right? There's lots of dollars with the commercial business there and everything else. And I guess it comes to then the property and the where the runoff comes from, and just as a city, the requirement just to make sure they're controlling stormwater runoff through their property and the parcels and everything else, so.
And they're seeing that flooding increasingly get worse over the years. I'm
Right,
guessing.
correct. In the last handful of years, right? So this building hasn't just gone up here in the last 5 years,
Yeah.
right? So for a number of years, they didn't have any issues with the ever-changing, evolving landscape when it comes to climate change and everything else. They're seeing an uptick in precipitation, no different than we've seen. We're using a higher frequency and a greater depth for our rainfall events when we do simulate stormwater modeling. So we're saying it's now, instead of this deep for a certain event, we're going to assume it's going to be this deep, because that's what we're seeing from a frequency analysis when we look at statistical information over the course of a variety of different decades and where that precipitation trend's going. Hence, it aligns within what he's seeing within his business, saying, I didn't have a problem before, and now all of a sudden I'm having a very frequent problem, and what's happening, right? So he has lots of questions as well, and why is this happening, and that's where we're here today.
Is there any risk to the cemetery as well? I mean, it looks like this could be backing up into some of the grave sites as well, or are those not in use?
No, absolutely. Those are very much in use along his property, and that's where there's susceptibility to erosion, even further erosion in those areas, which we don't want to go there when it comes to those types of situations. So there's erosion, flooding, saturation, all those different pieces that do kind of combine into it as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
How long has the current wetland been the way it is?
Well, a review of historical imagery suggests that the wetland is natural. It wasn't created by any sort of human action or flooding. But the sediment has been increasing over time. It hasn't been measured over time, but I know there's been comments from the property owner that it appears to be getting worse.
Kind of on a hill, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot for a wetland, but in talking with the natural resource staff at the city, they agreed that it does appear to be a natural wetland, so pursuing this process.
So revegetation plan, tree removal, fine, the ash are gonna be gone. Like I say, keeping in some buffer, but I'd be interested to see are you looking to do wet meadow? Are you looking to do, looking at those photographs, it looked like floodplain forest almost, even though I wouldn't, yeah, anyway, looking at, woodbine and a bunch of other stuff that was in the images. That's gonna be pretty sparse, so the sunlight is gonna give you better absorption. It's gonna be seasonally flooded, so you're gonna have the bottom of the basement probably having some vegetation. So wet meadow mixes, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, we have a transitional, so, the area around the stormwater pond for certain feet away from it, right, vertically with the bounce that'll occur that we anticipate based on the modeling, so it'll be one mix type. Then we get to the areas that are more upland, right, that aren't gonna be seasonally saturated because of the stormwater pond bounce. We transition to a different mix type, and just to try to balance it out, because you don't want to do all of one or all the other. It just does become, you'll have a zone then that doesn't grow as well as it should. And so we're trying to transition that into the landscape around as well.
So trying to have woodland grasses, like cut grass, pen sedge, not necessarily, and I'm trying to keep them into the native mixes, would strike me as something that's going to get you better holding. And is the adjacent landowner at the property that's been accepting all the flooding, are they going to be doing some things on their property too to further enhance the work?
You're referring to the commercial property and
Correct.
there? Yep,
Correct.
we're in the process right now, working with them to finalize the easement needs that we have, and they are looking at granting the city a permanent easement for access and maintenance purposes. And so what we're doing as well with that to help improve drainage as a whole, we are connecting their parking lot in a more direct way to the stormwater pond to allow that water to flow in there to help alleviate that, I guess, that water coming back to their area as a whole.
And if they did have a large rain event that everybody got swamped, this way it would get it off of their property and off and into the treatment areas.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer, but what is in a project like this, what is the overall success rate, for lack of a better term? Like, I mean, do you ever have further problems down the road that you didn't see coming, or is this like one and done, this should take care of the whole thing?
Stormwater is a difficult thing because that's unpredictable, right? It's not like we design a water main or design a sanitary sewer that we can very much predict exactly how many times people flush their toilets or turn on their faucets. And that's the stormwater soul. We designed to the 100-year event for this project. And as Commissioner over here was pointing out, that we have an ever-evolving landscape, which precipitation frequency, the amount that you get, it varies, right? And we model stormwater improvements based on standard industry practices, and then we look at it from a variety of different ways just to try to make sure that, to your point, is there something we're not seeing? If we get a different event, if we get that 2-inch rainfall that happens in 25 minutes, that's different than the 24-hour rainfall that is 7 inches, right? You're like, well, it's a lot more rain or it's a lot less, but they have different, like every storm sewer system or storm water system has a different reaction based on different events. And so we look at it from a different angle to understand, just to your point, what different things do we need to do? Do we need to manage something a little differently? Do we need to add a little bit of a feature in here to do that? And so that's why we try to look at these holistically from a couple different angles to help make sure that we can provide a sound design that's going to be the most resilient we can without, I hate to say it, digging a tunnel down to the Minnesota River to say, fine, everything's going to go there, but we know that there's cost comes an issue then as well, right? So we're trying to balance the benefit versus what the cost as a whole, and when we look at that and work with the city staff to make sure we're in line with everything.
In your model, is there a specific 100-year rain, like what is the 100-year rain total for this, or 100-year rain event? Like, for example, the 1 hour total or the 24-hour total?
7.63 is the 24-hour total, or 7.6 roughly? Don't hold me to that if you don't mind.
This is a good estimate, though.
It was but just to give you comparison, it was in the 6s not too long ago. It was the design event that we were using for depth, and then we're up into 7 now. So just to give you a sense of the feel and the magnitude that goes, and so it's definitely an increase much beyond than what you even think.
So this also will account for snowfall events as well?
Correct.
Like this past year, we had so much snow, this would be able to handle that as well?
And it's a great comment, Commissioner, because this area before didn't have an outlet. And so when the ground was frozen, well, the water couldn't absorb into the ground. So where do you think it went? It very much wanted to go in that parking lot. And so what we're doing is have a stormwater pond that has, like your bathtub, it has walls on it, it has the ability for water to build up in there. But we also have a storm sewer pipe now. So the storm sewer pipe is going to focus it into the storm sewer system versus allowing that overland flow right into it. So it also does very much negate the frozen ground condition issue that has been very ever present throughout the last how many years.
Are there any other questions, commissioners? Nope. Do we feel ready for a vote? All right, they are asking for a vote to bring this to council, recommendation to bring to council. For all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? All right, well, congratulations. We approve your plan. I wish you the best of luck with council. All right. Now we move on to miscellaneous items this evening. Looks like we have an update on the lawn pollinator project at Civic Center Park.
That is correct, Madam Chair. On your agenda, our natural resources tech, Linnea Weir, was able to put together an update on the lawn project, the pollinator lawn project that she presented to you back in March. And then I also received some photos of that project that I left on the dais there in front of you. So you have some photos to go along with that. When you go over to Civic Center to check that out, you will notice that the goats are back grazing on the buckthorn. So please check in with them. I know many of you have been paying close attention to that project along the way. Commissioners, this weekend on Saturday from 9 to 2 is a household hazardous waste collection at our maintenance facility. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And then finally, our next meeting is scheduled for November 20th. We get bumped back a couple of weeks due to elections, council needing our Monday meeting date. So we get bumped to the 20th of November. With that, that's all that I have.
Perfect, thank you. And with that, I would like to request a call for adjournment of tonight's October 2nd, 2023 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, have a lovely evening, everyone. Enjoy the beautiful night.